guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kirsten and this is Small Bobbins. So a bit of a different video today. It's not part of the series, it's not a tutorial, but it's a pep talk. Ever since I opened up my online shop for lingerie making supplies, I've had people email me or send me messages on Instagram and say things like, I would really love to make a bralette. I really want to try making my own lingerie. I would like to order a kit, but I'm nervous. I'm scared, I'm really unsure, I've never made one before, I don't know how to do it, I don't even know where to get started. I keep hearing all of these people who probably have so much potential in them for making beautiful lingerie, and so I wanted to make a video to tell you all that you can do it! It's really not that scary. I wanted to give you a pep talk and tell you you can do it. I mean, on the one hand, it seems a bit silly, like, why would you be scared of sewing fabric, especially if you're already sewing other types of garments? Like, it's not much of a stretch to take the leap into lingerie sewing. It's just fabric, it's just lace, it's just elastic. I think there's definitely a fear of failure with it. Like, lingerie, it's very close fitting. It can also be a bit expensive to make. There's a lot of different materials that you have to collect in order to make certain garments. It's not always true though. You can get away with not having everything. It's also very form-fitting. If you've watched my other series, you'll see that as I'm sewing the lingerie, I do end up making a lot of changes, and even with all the work that I'll put into a garment, in the very end, it might not turn out to fit me that well, which is kind of disappointing, especially when you spend so much time making something and then it doesn't turn out right, which really isn't very different from other types of garment sewing as well. You can spend a lot of money on a certain fabric, make a dress, turns out it doesn't fit that well. I think one of the differences with lingerie is that you do end up kind of constructing the whole thing before you can even try it on well. Whereas with a dress, you can kind of try it on as you're going along. The stretch factor can be a bit hard to understand at first as well. Like, there's just a lot of curves and stuff that we're dealing with. It can be hard to make a well-fitting garment with all of that, but that shouldn't scare you off of trying. So I tried to brainstorm a couple of tips to help motivate anybody who's a beginner to lingerie sewing or who wants to try it for the first time, to really just motivate you to get started. My biggest tip is to just do it. If you're worried about the cost or the kind of difficulty with sourcing materials, there are patterns out there that let you get started with sewing lingerie that don't require any sort of specialized materials or supplies. If you caught my bralette series, the Lovesick Bralette by George and Ginger Patterns uses no closures, no elastics, no sliders, no foam, no anything like that. It's a great way to just kind of get the feel for sewing stretch fabric, sewing together little pieces, finding your cup size and, measuring those different ones, sewing little darts, things like that. There are instructions for adding elastics and foam, and so that's something you could even build up to. But it's really simple. It's a free pattern even, so you don't spend money on the pattern. You could probably just scrounge up like an old t-shirt or some stretch fabric that you have in your stash. No elastics or other things. You could get started like literally right now. Like, you could stop the video and just go do it right now. Underwear as well. There's a lot of free patterns out there. All you need for that is just some jersey fabric. You probably have some in your stash. There are even some patterns that make use of like a fabric band rather than any elastic. The one that comes to mind is the Ava by JMB Patterns. Or it might even be possible to make a fabric band and kind of add elastic into that. If you don't have kind of the soft Pico plush back elastic, you could just use like any other elastic that you might have in your stash already. Let's say that you do want to tackle a pattern that requires specialized supplies and you're overwhelmed by where to find those supplies. A lot of lingerie shops, mine included, have beginner kits, and it's an excellent way to just get a bundle of materials that will be exactly what you need for a certain pattern. And I've even had people email me or send me messages and say, I'm interested in this kit, but I want to make this pattern. Is it going to work for that? Like, does that cover all of my needs? And I'm happy to answer that for you and make sure that it does have everything you need if there is a particular pattern that you have in mind for that kit. And it's true that every kit is not necessarily going to have everything you need for every single pattern, but it's going to be a good starter pack so that you can, start building your stash for lingerie making. Try starting with something simple. A pair of panties is a great way to get started, just with practicing how to apply the elastic. And practice. You have to practice so much. Like, you would not believe how terrible my first pairs of panties, my first bralettes, my first bras were. In fact, I still make terrible lingerie sometimes. It just does not go well. Of course, on Instagram, I'm not constantly sharing my failures. I'm only showing the pretty stuff, and I'm arranging it nicely. Everything that I made in the beginning was terrible. The elastic was wavy, the sizing wasn't correct, I didn't use the right materials in the right places, like grain lines, direction of greatest stretch, like nothing made sense. Even still, I did come out with some wearable garments. There are some that I still wear to this day, even though they're not perfect. Like, I still love them, they still work, they're still comfortable. And it just comes from practice that, like, you figure out how to get better and better each time, like how to apply the elastic, how to make sure you're not like stretching out the fabric when you should be putting tension on the elastic and things like that. If you're overwhelmed with what pattern you should be starting out with, especially if you've never made any sort of lingerie before, definitely go to the sewing community and try to look for reviews and feedback about which patterns are easy for beginners, or maybe not even like which patterns are easy, but which patterns come with very clear and beginner-friendly instructions, especially if the designers offer video tutorials or kind of extra sew-alongs on their blogs or something like that. If there's a lot of these extra resources, it's going to make you feel much more comfortable diving into a project like that. But maybe your motivation with sewing lingerie is that you want to make the really sheer, lacy, delicate, beautiful stuff. That's definitely one of the reasons why I got into sewing lingerie. Like, I want to make the pretty stuff. But delicate fabrics can be very difficult to sew. And if that is what's holding you back from making lingerie, again, you just kind of have to dive into it and do it. Delicate fabrics are not necessarily expensive. So things like lace, mesh, tulle, power net, all of those kind of like thinner, covered with holes, you're not even sure how you're supposed to stitch it together. There are cheap versions of all these fabrics if you're worried about kind of wasting your money on something that's not going to be wearable in the end. So just get your hands on those and practice. You will figure out which stitch lengths work better for which fabrics, which ones work better with your machine. You just kind of have to get into it and learn, and definitely just try to get over the fear of failure, because it's sewing. We will all mess up. Your machine will chew something up, you will use the wrong stitch length, stitches will pop or they won't stretch correctly, and all of this is just stuff that like you're not going to learn until you are there, until you get to that point and you do it and you try it, you screw up and you learn from it. And definitely take things slowly. I know I keep saying, just do it. But when you do have your materials, you do have your pattern picked out, don't just dive into it immediately. Like, take your time, try to think if there's, do you have all the materials that you need? Have you read through the instructions? Have you looked online to see if anybody has offered any useful feedback about it? And try to take it easy and enjoy the process. You could be setting yourself up for a mistake if you, get your kit in the mail, you print off your PDF pattern and cut into it and realize, oh shoot, I should have adjusted the back band to fit the hook and eye that I have. And speaking of stuff like that, I do have tips in one of my previous videos about pattern adjustments and things that you should be looking out for before you cut into your lingerie patterns. And also, feel free to ask for help. The sewing community is super helpful. A lot of people are really friendly and happy to offer tips, whatever help you may need with completing a project. That's one nice thing about the sewing community, is everybody is super friendly and wants to help others succeed. So if you have a question about a certain pattern and you see somebody else who's made it, send them a friendly message and maybe they'll help out. I guess the main thing with sewing lingerie as a beginner, the thing that motivated me is that I knew what I wanted to do. Like, I had this idea of the type of lingerie that I wanted to sew, and I could see other people making it. Like, all lingerie is handmade. Like, people are making this stuff, and it's just a skill that I don't yet have. And so I just kept telling myself, if there are other people out there that can learn to do this, then why can't I? That was the thing that was motivating me to keep trying, even though I kept failing at first, to kind of find new patterns, try them again, keep trying over and over again. So probably my biggest takeaway that I want to give to you guys is that if anybody else can sew lingerie, so can you. If I can sew lingerie, if anybody else can sew lingerie, then you can sew lingerie. So go out there and get started and sew some beautiful lingerie. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this little pep talk. I hope you will go out there and sew something beautiful. And if you like this video and you want to see more tutorials and pep talks and things like that, feel free to subscribe and hit the like button. I would really appreciate it. Don't forget to follow me here and on Instagram. I'm there at smallbobbins. And if you do need any lingerie supplies for your beginner projects or your intermediate projects or your advanced projects, wherever you are in your lingerie sewing journey, you can visit my shop at smallbobbins.com for all sorts of gorgeous materials. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye!